There is a growing tendency today to examine food in isolation, where each ingredient is studied for its individual impact on the body, and conclusions are often drawn about what should be increased or avoided. This approach appears logical because it allows clarity at a measurable level, yet something essential is often overlooked in this way of understanding. Food rarely enters the body as a single substance. It arrives as a combination. What we eat is not merely a collection of individual items, but a meeting of different qualities, different properties, and different effects that interact with one another in ways that are not always visible. When two substances come together, they do not simply remain as they are, they influence each other, and in that interaction, something new is formed. A simple way to observe this is through color. When two colors meet, they do not stand side by side without change. They merge, and in that merging, a third color emerges that carries a character different from both. Food behaves in a similar manner within the body. Ancient Ayurveda recognized this with great clarity and gave careful attention to what it calls the compatibility of food combinations. It observed that the effect of food depends not only on what is eaten, but also on how different elements are brought together. Certain combinations support digestion, clarity, and balance, while others disturb internal processes in subtle ways that may not be immediately noticeable. For instance, there are combinations that slow down digestion, leading to the formation of what Ayurveda describes as accumulation or residue within the system. This does not always manifest as an immediate discomfort, but over time it begins to influence energy levels, clarity of mind, and overall well-being. The modern tendency to focus only on nutritional values often overlooks this dimension because it studies food in separation while the body experiences it in combination. This creates a gap between what is measured and what is lived. When one begins to observe food in this way, attention naturally shifts from isolated ingredients to relationships between them. The question changes from what is good or bad to what works well together. This is a subtle but significant shift. Because harmony within the body is rarely the result of individual elements alone. It arises from the way they come together. This understanding is not limited to food. It can be seen in many aspects of life. There are individuals who, when observed separately, may appear to carry certain limitations, yet when they come together, something entirely different emerges. Their interaction creates a space where qualities that were not visible earlier begin to express themselves. The result is not a simple addition of two personalities, but the emergence of a new dynamic. In the same way, food combinations create a dynamic within the body. They influence digestion, absorption, and the way nutrients are processed and utilized. Ayurveda approached this with a refined sensitivity, recognizing that the body does not respond merely to substances, but to their interactions. It considered factors such as taste, energy, post-digestive effect, and the inherent nature of substances, and how these qualities align or conflict when combined. This is why certain combinations were advised with care, while others were discouraged, even if the individual components were otherwise considered beneficial. When such principles are ignored, the body may continue to function, but it does so with a certain strain that accumulates over time. This strain does not always announce itself immediately. It builds quietly, influencing digestion, energy, and clarity in ways that are often attributed to other causes. A more attentive approach to food begins by observing how one feels after eating different combinations. There is a difference between feeling light and settled and feeling heavy or unclear. This difference carries information. It reflects how the body is responding to what has been consumed. When this observation becomes consistent, one begins to recognize patterns. Certain combinations support ease, while others create disturbance. This recognition does not require strict rules or rigid control. It requires awareness. Simple adjustments can bring significant changes, allowing meals to remain balanced and not overly complex. Giving the body enough time to process one meal before introducing another. Avoiding combinations that feel heavy or conflicting. Choosing simplicity where possible. These are not restrictions, but refinements. They align the act of eating with the natural functioning of the body. When food is approached in this way, it becomes more than nourishment at a physical level. It becomes a way of maintaining clarity and balance within the system. This clarity extends beyond the body. Because when the body is at ease, the mind also reflects that ease. There is a steadiness that begins to appear, a reduction in unnecessary disturbance, and a greater sense of alignment in daily life. In this sense, the wisdom of Ayurveda does not stand as an alternative to modern understanding, but as a complementary perspective that brings attention to aspects that are often overlooked. It reminds us that life does not function in isolation. Everything exists in relationship. And it is within these relationships that the true effect of any element is revealed. When this is understood, even in a simple way, the act of eating becomes more conscious. It is no longer guided only by information, but by observation and experience. And in that shift, one begins to move from reacting to food towards understanding it. This understanding does not require complexity. It begins with noticing. And through that noticing, a more harmonious way of living quietly takes shape. When one looks more closely at the way food traditions have evolved across regions, it becomes clear that they were not formed merely by preference or taste, but through a long process of observation and refinement. Over generations, communities have understood what suits their climate, their land, and their way of living. What remains today as traditional food is the result of this continuity, where combinations, methods of preparation, and patterns of eating have been shaped through lived experience. This carries a significance that often goes unnoticed. Because when food arises from such a depth of understanding, it aligns naturally with the body that has grown within the same environment. In contrast, many modern food trends move quickly, shaped by changing ideas and limited observation, and their long-term effects are often understood only after time has passed. When seen in this way, the question of what to eat becomes simpler. It begins to return towards what has already been tested through time, towards what belongs to the place in which one lives, and towards what has sustained people across generations. Choosing traditional food is not a return to the past. It is a recognition of what has quietly endured because it works. And in that recognition, one begins to move away from uncertainty towards a way of living that carries both balance and clarity.